Hello dear viewers, welcome back to our channel. Today, we're exploring one of the most mysterious and thought-provoking phenomena ever witnessed by medical professionals, hospice workers, and families around the world. The moment when people, just before death, begin to speak in languages they've never studied, never practiced, and never even heard during their lifetimes. These are not isolated or random events. They've happened again and again, in different countries, cultures, and time periods. Often they happen during the final hours or minutes of life. Sometimes they come with deep emotional clarity, and sometimes with messages that no one can fully understand. But every time, it leaves behind more questions than answers. What causes this? Are these souls remembering past lives? Are they channeling something greater? Perhaps something divine? Or is there a part of the mind we haven't yet begun to understand? Today, we'll go deep. We'll explore 9 powerful real-life stories from hospice care and medical professionals. These cases will not only send chills down your spine, they'll challenge what you believe about life, death, memory, and the soul. Let's begin. 1. The German Elegy. Dr. Alan Richards and Robert. Our second story brings us to New York City. Dr. Alan Richards, a well-respected physician, shared an extraordinary account from his time working in palliative care. Robert, a 65-year-old retired architect, had been battling late-stage cancer. He had no prior history with the German language. Born and raised in the Bronx, he had never traveled to Europe. His education and career had nothing to do with language or history. But on the evening of his passing, Robert, who had been mostly nonverbal for 2 days, suddenly sat up in his hospital bed and began reciting poetry. In fluent German, he spoke clearly, softly, almost in a trance. Startled, a nurse called for Dr. Richards. Recognizing the language, the doctor recorded part of it and later played it for a friend who was a native German speaker. The friend confirmed it was not only proper German, it was classic 19th century poetry. The phrasing and references suggested the works of Rainer Maria Rilke and Friedrich Schiller, famous poets of that time. And when his words were translated into English, this is what he said. I heard the wind singing through the old trees, and suddenly I knew, all life is a song. I have loved, sometimes quietly, sometimes too loudly, but always with an open heart. Pain was my teacher, joy my gift. I have fallen, and yet I never forgot to rise again. Forgive me for what I did wrong and take with you what I truly loved. For love remains when all else fades. The shadows grow longer, but I do not fear them, because there beyond the final breath light awaits. Tell them I am grateful. For every smile, for every hand, for every hour I was allowed to be part of this world. Dr. Richards said something that stuck with me. It challenges our understanding of the mind and what we're truly capable of. Something within him remembered these words, whether in this life or another. It was as if he was accessing something ancient and wise within his soul. Robert passed a few hours later. His wife, who had sat by his side the entire time, said, I think he was remembering who he really was. Not just from this life, but from all the lives he's ever lived. Before we explore more of this topic, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to help spread knowledge of near-death experiences and life after death to those seeking answers. If you have insights or more information, feel free to share in the comments or contact us via email. Now, if your heart is ready, stay close. What you're about to hear could shift your entire reality. 2. Whispering in French, Maria's last words. Now we travel to Texas. Maria was a hospice patient in her late 70s. She had lived a simple life, never traveled abroad, and worked as a homemaker for most of her life. Her caregiver, Ruby Gramlow, was used to seeing patients in their final hours become quiet or confused. But Maria's transition was anything but that. In the early morning hours of her passing, Maria, who had been silent for nearly a day, suddenly began speaking in fluent French. Ruby, shocked and confused, recorded the moment and later shared it with a French-speaking nurse. It turned out that Maria was reciting what sounded like childhood memories, descriptions of fields, songs, and a mama calling her home. Ruby said, she spoke with such clarity and emotion. It was beautiful and mysterious. Maria died later that morning, but Ruby believes those final words were more than just random memories. She believes Maria was either returning to a past life or being guided by ancestral spirits who spoke French. Now pause and think. Different people, different parts of the world, speaking languages they never learned. Just before death. Is this a coincidence? Is the human mind tapping into something deeper than we can imagine? Stay with us. We still have 7 powerful stories to go, and they just might leave you speechless. 3. The Unspoken Tongue. The Sarah Thompson story. Our first story comes from Ohio, USA. Sarah Thompson was a 78-year-old woman in hospice care. She was a retired school teacher, deeply religious, and known for her quiet, gentle personality. For most of her life, Sarah had never traveled outside the United States, let alone studied a foreign language. Her nurse, Julie McFadden, who has been a hospice nurse for over a decade, had cared for hundreds of patients before Sarah. But nothing could prepare her for what she was about to witness. In Sarah's final days, as her body began to fail and she entered what nurses call the transition phase, that sacred period when the body prepares to die, something incredible happened. Sarah began to speak, but not in English. At first, Julie thought Sarah was mumbling from the effects of medication, but soon it became clear. Sarah was speaking Italian, fluently, with clear pronunciation, appropriate tone, and even emotional inflection. The most startling part? Sarah had never studied Italian. Her family confirmed this. She had no Italian ancestry, no friends who spoke the language, no exposure at all. Julie said, and I quote, "It was as if she was recalling memories from another life, or channeling something beyond our understanding. She wasn't just saying random words, it was full sentences, conversations." At one point, Sarah seemed to be talking to someone, not in the room, but around her. She smiled, cried softly, and whispered phrases that translated later to things like, "I missed you," and "I am ready." Julie wasn't the only one present. Sarah's daughter recorded a short clip on her phone, which was later verified by a language professor from a local university. The dialect? Old Central Italian, not something easily picked up or mimicked. What does this mean? Was it a spiritual moment? A past life memory? Or something that science has yet to fully understand? Sarah passed away peacefully later that night, smiling, as if surrounded by familiar voices speaking a language she only knew at the very end. 4. Ancient Tongue of the Soul, George and the Greek Mystery. Now let's move to California, where hospice nurse Emily Sanders shared a case that still gives her goosebumps years later. Her patient was George, a retired mechanic in his early 80s. George lived a quiet life, never attended college, and never studied any foreign languages. He was a kind man, practical, grounded, and loved working with his hands. In the final days of his life, George slipped in and out of sleep more often, as most patients in transition do. But on the night before he passed, Emily noticed something strange. George opened his eyes and began speaking in a language Emily had only heard in academic settings, ancient Greek. Now here's the twist. Emily had studied linguistics in college and had taken a course in ancient Greek during her studies. She didn't speak it fluently, but she recognized it immediately. She described it like this. He wasn't just saying words, he was delivering something that sounded like a speech or a prayer. His voice was steady, calm, like someone remembering an oath. The room was quiet. No family was present at the time, just George and Emily. She listened carefully, and what she could make out were words related to light, the gods, and the sea. She noted it felt like a farewell, not just to life, but to something older, something eternal. George passed away peacefully a few hours later. Emily kept thinking about that experience. She later consulted a classics professor who listened to her description and confirmed that the structure of George's sentences matched traditional epic poetry. How does a man with no formal education speak in a dead language, fluently in his final moments? Was it a soul memory? A past life? A spiritual channeling? It's impossible to say for sure. But one thing's clear. This wasn't random. It came from somewhere. Maybe from within. Maybe from beyond. 5. David's Final Blessing. Speaking Hebrew Without a Past. Our final story brings us to Florida, where Dr. Helen Moore, a palliative care specialist, had an unforgettable experience with a patient named David, age 72. David was not religious, had no Jewish heritage, and never spoke anything other than English. His family confirmed that he had never even shown interest in languages or spiritual practices. But during the last 24 hours of his life, David began to whisper in Hebrew. His wife, startled, recorded the words and later had them translated. The phrases were stunning. He was saying things like, "Peace be upon you," and "I return to the source," along with lines from traditional Hebrew prayers used in both mourning and blessing. Dr. Moore, who'd seen hundreds of patients pass, said, "This wasn't a dream or a hallucination. This was deliberate. This was sacred." Later, a rabbi from a local synagogue verified that David had quoted from the Kaddish, the Jewish prayer recited for the dead, a prayer he could not have possibly known. His wife was moved to tears. Maybe this was his soul speaking. Maybe in that moment he remembered who he truly was. When David passed, the room was filled with a sense of reverence, like something ancient had come to greet him. 6. The Whispering Priest. Father Emmanuel's last words. Father Emmanuel was a retired Catholic priest in Louisiana, known for his peaceful demeanor and devotion to prayer. In his final hours, the nurses reported that he began whispering rapidly in Aramaic, the ancient language believed to have been spoken in ancient. None of the staff understood the language, but a chaplain visiting the hospice recognized some of the words as phrases from the Lord's Prayer in ancient script. What made this extraordinary was that Father Emmanuel had never studied Aramaic and had preached in English his entire life. The chaplain called it a sacred moment, and some believed it was his spirit preparing for the divine transition. 7. Little Anna's farewell. A child's sudden speech. Anna was a 6-year-old girl from Philadelphia who had been battling a rare illness. She was nonverbal due to her condition and had never spoken a full sentence in her life. Yet, just hours before her passing, her mother reported that Anna began speaking fluently in a melodic language that no one in the room could identify. Her mother described it as something like a lullaby, calming and beautiful. Nurses on duty confirmed the event, saying the room felt charged with warmth and stillness. Linguists later speculated it could have been an ancient dialect, but no one could say for sure. Her story continues to touch the hearts of many, reminding us of the mysterious connection between innocence and the unknown. 8. The Silent War. Veteran speaks Russian. John Miller, a decorated World War II veteran, had lived a quiet life in rural Montana. In his final days, he rarely spoke until the last few hours, when he suddenly began recounting vivid stories in fluent Russian. His granddaughter, a language student, recognized the language and recorded some of his phrases. When translated, they included phrases like, "The bridge was lost, and we survived the snow." The family was shocked, as John had never served in Russia or learned the language. Theories ranged from hidden wartime trauma to deep subconscious memories from another life. Whatever the case, the moment brought tears and awe to those at his side. 9. Elizabeth and the Sacred Chant. Elizabeth, a 69-year-old woman in palliative care in Chicago, had always been skeptical of spirituality. Yet during her final moments, her daughter and a hospice nurse reported that Elizabeth began chanting softly in what was identified later as Sanskrit. The words, when translated by a visiting Hindu priest, were verses from an ancient Vedic hymn invoking peace and liberation of the soul. Her daughter, a devout Christian, said, "It was the most peaceful I've ever seen my mother." The priest explained that such occurrences are rare, but not unheard of, and may signify a spiritual awakening in the final transition from life to death. So what do we make of all this? 9 different people, 9 completely different lives, 9 unrelated languages, all spoken with clarity and purpose during their final moments. And the most chilling part, none of them had ever studied these languages. Not in school, not in life. These aren't urban legends or spiritual folklore. These are first-hand accounts from trained professionals, doctors, hospice nurses, caregivers, people who know the difference between delusion and lucidity. So, what's really going on here? Is it possible that we carry memories from past lives tucked deep inside us, and when the body lets go, those memories come to the surface? Is there a part of the human soul that is eternal, connected to other cultures, other times, other languages? Are we tapping into something divine, something cosmic as we cross over? Or is death not an end, but a return? One thing is for sure, these moments challenge everything we thought we knew about the mind, language, memory, and spirit. They remind us that death is not just a physical process, it may be a deeply spiritual one where the veil between worlds becomes thin and we speak with the voice of our truest self. So next time someone asks you if there's more to life than what we see, Share these stories. Share the mystery. Because in the end, we are all just souls, remembering something beautiful. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, exploring this deep and powerful subject. If this video moved you, inspired you, or made you think, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone you care about. Leave a comment below if you've ever heard of a story like this or experienced one yourself. We read every comment, and your story might just help someone else feel less alone. And until next time, stay curious, stay open, and stay connected to the mystery. See you in the next video. Thank you.